Soul Bossa Nova, and it's the music that tells us it's Friday. It's Free Speech Fridays, and it's the half hour of the show where we get together with a couple of people who don't mind speaking freely and talk about what's gone down in the country this week. Two entirely new Free Speech Friday panellists today. A warm welcome, ladies first, or adult human females first. Helen Houghton, the leader of the new Conservative Party, joins us from Christchurch. Helen, how are you?
Hello, Sean. Thank you for having me on this morning.
Oh, great to have you with us. And from the other end of the country, up north, a guy who can throw a good party and does a bit of politics to boot, Shane Jones. Well, what do we call him at the moment? Ex-New Zealand First Party member, Labour Party minister. Geez, Shane, what are you?
A coat of many colours. Good morning.
Yeah, well, the rainbow colours, Shane. Is there something you want to tell the group?
The only rainbow row up here is the one with a pot of political gold that I'm hoping to enjoy at the end of the year.
All right, look, and we got to, actually, I just suddenly realised you're both politicians as well. That was my bad. I should have seen that coming. Let's kick off, guys. It's been, and let's go back 6 days. Let's go back to Albert Park on Saturday. And as I said, I think most New Zealanders are getting on with their lives and trying to figure out how they're going to feed the kids and get them to school and pay for the petrol and pay the mortgage. But amongst our political elites and our chattering classes and in the Beltway, what happened at Albert Park was a pretty big moment, wasn't it, Helen?
Yes, Sean. And look, while you say most New Zealanders are getting on with their life, I actually disagree. I think there's a lot of women out there who are ready to go for the next stage. This is certainly not put to bed. Can I just start by mentioning a couple of people? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
So I have been, I put out a couple of press releases this week as well as an open letter to the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
And because of that, I've been on the phone nearly all week, haven't stepped out of the house. And look, I only just watched your show with Posey Parker last night, as well as listened to Linda.
Oh, Linda's cool. Wasn't that amazing?
My gosh. So that was really distressing. Now, what I'd like to say to Linda, I want to have a big shout out to Linda because, I mean, her account, that was unbelievable, right? And now I saw Linda. I was on the rotunda, and that, I hope she doesn't mind me saying, that tiny woman who has the biggest heart, and what an amazing woman. So you're talking about New Zealander of the Year. Please make sure that she's in that category because she is a hero. What an absolute hero.
Wow.
And she talked about the angel men. So they were the guys that were with me who actually had to protect her and then help her get through that rabid crowd with me as well and a couple of other ladies.
Helen, would you agree, though, something happened at Albert Park on Saturday that changed our view of ourselves or woke us up a bit?
So there's been a number of us who have already been awake to this whole agenda, but I would say probably most of New Zealand have actually seen what's going on now. You know, we've been talking about this in the education system for a number of years. 4 years ago, I put the petition out. Yeah. And what Kelly J has done is opened it up for the whole of New Zealand to actually start addressing this.
Shane, do you agree with that? That this was some sort of watershed on Saturday?
I think it's the flowering of what Labour has always been on about, mate. It's morphed into a vicious type of cancel culture. It's a direct assault and a diminution of the status of women. I mean, women don't want to be called chest feeders and other ugly, awkward terms. What the hell has happened to our country? But more importantly, when you've got the Minister of Immigration describing Posey as vile and repugnant and not welcome here, you've got the High Court judge making, in my view, irrelevant remarks when he turned down the application to deny her access. And then you've got the Prime Minister acting as an echo chamber for this viral, feral, reckless group, the leader of whom, which I'm told is now in New York. I think that's a troll. I think there's been a lot of photoshopping going on, and that person just doesn't want to get arrested. This is Eli Rabash, and there are actually charges out. Amazing. The police got off their ass after for 5 days, but they did.
So
yeah,
Shane,
but I think the point I'm making, it's a fulfilment of a trend that's been building a long time. Winston and I were absolutely disinterested, totally, for the short time that we were in government with Labour. And the Greens really are the new apostles and the new Pharisees, taking this nonsense, this fringe issue, to a ridiculously topical level.
Yeah, it's hard to stop though, guys, isn't it? As I said, Chanel Lyle is suddenly New Zealander of the year. It's not Young New Zealander of the Year. Hasn't denounced any of the violence. And also I'd say the New Zealander of the Year at Kiwi Bank last night. I'm sure he's a nice fella. But what did he do? He came up with an imaginary Maori holiday, for goodness sake. Shane?
I'm sorry, I'm not across that. Is that the Matariki guy?
Yeah, he's New Zealander of the Year.
Look, I said ages ago that Kiwi Bank had gone woke. I said that in 2019. Of course, politicians tend to be a bit nervous attacking banks because most of us have borrowed money or we still owe money. But that aside, I've said to you in the past, in various other contexts, that the bank that goes woke goes broke.
Yeah. Helen, what do you think? Is that part of the problem when we look at who Kiwi Bank, a government-owned bank, broadcast on government-owned media, do we look at the New Zealander of the Year awards? There were actually a couple of people in there who've done some good stuff, but is that indicative of where we're at?
I think that's across the board everywhere. So you've got, the issues around the education, not just in our primary and secondary school, but also the institutions now who are being, they're being forced to have all these woke identity politics, the racist issues in there as well. And so it's across everywhere. The government, I cannot work out how the hell they can continue to do this. It's like they're blind. They're not reading the room.
Yeah.
I'm going
to put it to the both of you that I think there's a lot of political uncertainty in this country right now. I think the honeymoon is over for Chris Hipkins and the tide might start going out again. It's almost as if the identity politics woke radicals are just saying, okay, we're going to go for broke because we're probably going to be out in October. Let's throw the kitchen sink at diversity. Do you think that might be happening, Shane? It's like endgame?
It's been happening for a while. Look, Chippy can have as many hangi bonfires as he likes, but all he's doing is fueling those fires with the very architecture that he helped create. And Kiwis can see through that. But more importantly, identity politics has taken possession of the left of New Zealand politics, and I have to say it's intruded as well into both ACT and the National Party, and it's almost you're going to be censured, cancelled or alienated if you
come on, Shane, don't be naughty. The ACT parties stand firmly against this. National's just interested in the votes in the middle.
Oh, no. Well, anyway, I didn't come on here to argue incessantly about ACT.
Yeah,
but the point I'm saying, it's a tide that's washing everywhere.
Yeah. Helen, what does this do for a group like yours, New Conservatives? And I don't mean to be mean, but you haven't got a snowball's chance of hell of getting into Parliament. But what does it do? I'm just being honest with you. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. What does it mean for your membership and your members, though? What reaction are you getting from them? Because it seems to me it's polarising people horribly.
Well, like I said, I've hardly stepped outside my house. I've hardly been off the phone. I've got women everywhere, so I'm pretty sure that most of the women are going to actually vote for New Conservative this year. I have no doubt about that. We've got a whole pile of people
can I just say I love minor party politicians who say that with such sublime confidence.
Come on. We'll just see.
It never comes true. I would say though,
this is a big historical moment.
Yeah,
absolutely. That the abuse of women. We don't even have the Minister of Women hasn't said boo about this whole situation. I mean, where is she?
Yeah, I got to say though, to both of you though, I think this is interesting in a political sense. Swinging female voters. We're all with Labor. That's what's kept them in power. And I really do think that for many women, this is now an issue and they are going to be looking elsewhere, Shane. I mean, if you put on a skirt, Shane, you'd be nailing this.
Because he's still not a woman. Doesn't matter what he wears. Sorry, Shane.
Yeah, no, bro. You put a frock on Matua Shane, there's a certain part of the anatomy that will never change.
Oh, gosh.
All right, but you do realise now Labor's, if you like, stranglehold, God, I hate to use that term, on swinging female voters may be damaged by that, and that's a significant change in the political landscape, Shane.
Yeah, that's my sense, talking to people in the north. I must say, though, the majority of the ones I've bumped into around the north, both men and women, they are focused really on more earthy issues here in the north. They genuinely are scared and afraid. Obviously, law and security bubbles away, but the cost of living and the ability to live a life with class and dignity in an economic sense is scaring the bejesus out of them. The women, however, that have approached me, they feel reluctant to talk about the whole Posey issue too vigorously, but once they go behind the veiled curtain and cast a vote, they're not going to put up with this identity politics rubbish, which diminishes them any longer. Yeah.
Well, look, the other big story this week, Stuart Nash gets the slash, and you are peripherally, you're kind of involved in this, Shane. I just gave up, didn't I? First up, it's kind of an insider's story, but he was, a leading light, much vaunted MP for Napier, and he's toast because he actually went to some of his donors and he told them actually about some conversations that you were involved in the cabinet, on the cabinet table, right, Shane? Shane, do you feel betrayed by Stuart Nash? Did you know about this?
No, I'm one of the guys that all the cabinet papers I may have had, I walked out of the office after I tidied up personal effects and left everything behind. Every role that I've had in life, I've never taken papers forward with me. I find them to be a bit of a yoke rather than a sort of treasure source.
I'll tell you a funny story, Shane. I was talking to the late Gray Nelson, who was private secretary to Sir Keith Holyoake. And I can remember Gray telling me many years ago a story as Sir Keith Holyoake was leaving the Prime Minister's office and packing up, and Gray said to him, do you want me to keep all these papers? And Holyoake said, well, whatever for? He said, because I could write your memoir for me. And he said, no, forget it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, look, I bumped into Stu in 2005. We were both trudging around Auckland when I originally joined parliamentary politics. Being a mate of mine, we played in the rugby league team, rugby golden oldie team. And look, he's been caught out, cack-handed. You don't share the content of cabinet discussions. I can't really remember the ebb and flow.
So the detail of it isn't actually that important, is it?
No. I think it just depends where the Chippy wants to take the issue now, because the thing about reviews, you never know what you're going to find. And I've got no doubt in my mind that Chippy will not want a review into every single minister in terms of who they're emailing and how they're emailing. Yeah. The unstated story here is how did it leak and who stood to benefit from this leak?
Yeah. Helen, I must say too, Politic wrote some stuff about me in relation to the story that was largely fictional, but they're so small I can't really be bothered. Helen, what it does tell us, and the story emerging now is that this malfeasance by Stuart Nash was probably known, if not to Jacinda Ardern, but to her staff 2 years ago, which really does raise the question of honesty and transparency, doesn't it?
Yes, well, like you're talking about emails that are back in 2020, is that right?
Yeah.
So the timing as well, like Shane mentioned, but the transparency is, firing him is a bit hypocritical because the whole Labor government thinks that rules don't apply to them. You've got, he's been fired for it, but yet they covered it up because it wasn't politically expedient at the time. And frankly, that most transparent government has a culture of cover-up. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. There appears to be ongoing political interference with the police as they have been persecuting enemies of the government for several years. And I'll give you an example. At the Parliament protest, and with politically targeted firearm raids over the years, while letting the left get away with doing whatever they like, as we saw Saturday at the Let Women Speak event.
Yeah. Hey, and Helen, you raised a really good point, and I wanted to bring it up, and I hadn't put it in the list. Billy Takaha and some other guy off to prison for organising a COVID march. As much as I think Billy Takaha is a card-carrying con artist, I still think that's an overreach, and that's almost martyring the guy. And if you're not locking up Billy Takaha, you've got to lock up Chanel Lal, not make him Young New Zealander of the Year, Shane.
Yeah, look, Billy TK and his dad are some of New Zealand's finest musos and guitarists, and sadly, young Billy should have probably
stuck to that,
pursuing musical outcomes. Yeah, I mean, you can't doubt the man's ability in that regard. But look, the decisions of these courts and these judges in terms of the types of sentences they bring down, as Winston said in his Howard speech, it often defies belief. The reality is, hundreds of thousands of Kiwis felt that their freedom and liberty was grossly compromised, and in the end, it's the excessive reach of curbing freedom in Auckland that led to Jacinda being a very despised figure in Auckland and has driven her out of political life.
All right, so let's just more broadly then on this police thing. Do we have a broader problem with our police force? Are they politicised?
Let me jump in very briefly. I am deeply concerned, and I've been for a long time, about the leadership of the police. I'd like to see us import the Queensland model to deal with the scourge of the gangs, the proliferation of the menace and violence, and also the fact that they've colonised the highways. Every time there's a large gang hui, the police seem to practice co-governance. They have a leadership discussion with the rangatiras of the gang as to how they're going to manage it.
Yeah.
Hello, they are not a positive addition to society. Yeah. They represent an assault on every value that we should cherish to do with our citizenship. I hope they make me the Minister of Police in the future.
All right. Well, there's a fair bit of water to flow under the bridge before that's possible, Shane. Helen.
Aspirational.
Helen, I looked at what happened going back to Albert Park on Saturday. The police were there and they almost pointedly, that phone call with Linda tells us they almost deliberately did nothing. Yet when the politicians and the woke news media are hiding in Parliament, 700 police are deployed, and I think the police were the meat and the sandwich. I actually think they behaved pretty well there. Thousands of New Zealanders on the lawn. The police are more than happy to intervene there to protect the politicians and, to be honest, the woke journalists who were there. I wasn't on either side. I went down amongst the crowd and talked to those people. There doesn't seem to be a lot of consistency here, eh?
Yeah, look, I was at both events and, I stood there in awe of the police lineup outside Parliament. And then, obviously, I was on the rotunda. When I arrived at the park, we saw, the place was overrun, but we saw 5 police standing under a tree. And I'm like, okay, how do we get in here? So the first place we went to was that little group of police. Didn't see anywhere else. And I'm like, okay, how do we get in here? I'm supposed to be speaking. And they're just like, through the hand, I would just follow the path around. I'm like, what bloody path? You couldn't get in. And so we had to just push our way right around the back. In my heels, I had to climb over a railing and jump up into the rotunda from around the back. And actually, Caitlin, who's emailed me, I never knew before before this week, she, the pregnant woman, actually, I didn't find out till she rang me that she was actually one of the ladies who helped me climb over into the rotunda. Yeah, she was awesome.
And she's talked a bit on the program today too.
But look, it's just disgusting. I mean, we were the police. I stood up there looking out at that ferocious crowd, and there were a lot of our women, a lot of women in society were out in that as well, and the abuse of women, the women that have been bashed. Yeah. What the hell? Sorry.
Well, look, here, someone's just sent me a text. Billy TK goes to prison, and I think what they're basically saying is, Chanel Lal gets an award, gets a medal. Kind of weird world, isn't it?
And he was, I don't know if you've seen the photos, but he was right above me on the rotunda shouting through a megaphone into my ear, as well as all the other abuse that he would have been hurling. And this guy gets New Zealander of the Year. I mean, there's something wrong
Young New
with
Zealander
our
of the
society.
Year. That means he can still
something
win
wrong
New
with
Zealander
our
of the Year when he
society.
grows up to be to be a big
When
boy
he grows up,
or girl.
when he grows
Well, there
up,
may not be a Kiwi bank as we know it, and by that time, unless they change their ways.
Well, you think that's a Kiwi bank culture thing? What happened last night?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You were involved in setting up Kiwi Bank, Shane, though. Were you a supporter of it?
Oh, look, Kiwi Bank needs to be run in a very aggressive fashion to moderate the behaviour of the Aussie banks, but the high day of Kiwi Bank's support seems to have passed. Look, I know the CEO of the Kiwi Bank. I know a host of senior people in the Kiwi Bank. My personal dealings with them are only professional, but the public culture, and one wonders whether or not they're projecting this culture on behalf of the politicians who act as their properties.
Yeah, I get you completely, Shane. All right, look, I haven't got long, but I want to cover off a couple of other things. I think what happened in Albert Park last Saturday was certainly supported by the news media, who misnamed deliberately over and over again Kelly J. Keane Minchell as an anti-trans activist rather than a women's rights activist. They gave Chanel Lal a platform to gather that angry mob together, or parts of it were an angry mob, and they crowed, it would seem to me, collectively, the news media, when a woman and many other New Zealand women were assaulted and bullied into silence. And then we find yesterday that one of the organisations, one of the most woke media organisations, Today FM, has closed because no one's interested in woke. That seemed a really strange thing, don't you think, Helen?
Well, you're right. I mean, who is interested in woke? You know, I imagine, well, most people I know listen to you, Sean. I mean, even my adult sons, I've asked them, you know, have you heard about this and this? And I'm like, we don't watch the news, we don't listen to the news. No one wants, you know, how many young adults out there are actually listening to any of that rubbish that they're pushing? I mean, it's a vicious cancel culture out there that they have fed. You know, I mean, I don't know if you're aware, but there's been a book. There's been this crazy person who's written a book about some alt right-wing people.
He's the nutter, Byron C. Clark from down Christ. He's a weird guy.
Yeah, and the media have picked that up. They've picked it up, and they've promoted him. Now, he's got no credentials. He's got no qualifications, as far as I'm aware, except for trolling Facebook for a few years. And now he's come out saying that this person, you know, and me, myself, because I'm a knitter and crochet and plait my hair occasionally and throughout my
you're a
teaching career.
Nazi, Helen. I only brought you on to give some Nazi balance to the program.
So now I'm in this book and, you know, plastered out there as this person that I'm not, just a regular Kiwi chick who's been educating almost 20 years. It's madness, and the media.
And look, it's like this, and Shane, you might want to comment on this. I suggested earlier on that the woke left are just, it's like a suicide mission now, and Today FM maybe is the first hurry-curry casualty of woke media.
Yesterday, Tova's debacle I described as the epitome of if you're woke, you go broke.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. The second thing, I suffered the misfortune of being possibly the last person she interviewed. Not that contributed to her demise. Look, the reality, mate, is that identity politics has plagued Parliament since the very early years of the noughties. It charged forward. It hasn't gone because there's an echo chamber not only in our media but in our bureaucracy. And the only way I see it as changing is the injection of very robust personalities at the top of the tree and quietly but diligently, not only challenging, unwinding a lot of the very secret things that have been done.
Yeah, well, Today FM, and I'm just going to share this with you guys, my understanding is, believe it or not, that I think, and it was made clear from leaked recordings yesterday with Wendy Palmer, the acting chief executive of MediaWorks, that they're in bigger financial shtick than we know, and it's not just Today FM. I'm going to make a prediction, and I'm going to make a suggestion. I think right now, Stuff and MediaWorks are in discussions on a merger. And you heard it here first, because I think the only way they take on NZME is to cover a whole lot of bases and a whole lot of demographics, and that is the only, I know Stuff's in trouble, MediaWorks in trouble. That's, I think, the union that comes out of this. And you'd hope that it was a union that was less extreme and identitarian than either of those organisations have been to date, wouldn't you?
Well, if you're in the business of sustaining the commercial success of a business, step away from identity politics and follow the politics of the people. And they were not reflected in the up at Albert Park. Or Martima's mad reaction blaming a motorbike. She was,
and look, that's the other thing.
Started well before the motorbike.
Yeah, the motorbike on the grassy knoll. I'm sorry, I left it till last because it's just frickin' laughable, isn't it? It's laughable, the excuse, and that she was traumatised. We've seen the pictures now. Strangely, she seemed to be wearing padding under her clothes, but there's no way that the excuse... I mean, Stuart Nash can't go up and say, I was hit by a motorbike 3 years ago, that's why I breached cabinet confidentiality, can he? Helen, what did you make?
The reality is...
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Shane. The reality is...
I was going to... Well, I've got the sense that the motorbike hit her after her interview.
Yeah, look, the timeline is all wrong. We need a Warren Commission. We need Oliver Stone to make a frickin' movie out of this. Helen, could you believe it? Could you believe that even a Prime Minister stood, and I was there with a straight face and tried to pull that excuse?
Look, it's just incredible. I mean, if a male had come out with something like that, it just wouldn't have stood. And yet we're supposed to believe that she's able to be racist and sexist all in the one moment because of a motorbike who whipped past her. Now, I wrote in a letter, open letter to the Prime Minister about her. She needs to be stood down for her male bashing, stating all violence is caused by men. By men, we know that is not true, that all violence is caused by men. I mean, there were horrific 52k women have been in refuge. I heard that before. I don't know if that was over the last year, but we know that that's a factor. We know it's huge, but it's not only caused by men. And then her racist comment that violence comes from white men. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I wonder if it was a white man on that motorbike. Anyway, just throwing that out there. I mean, her misuse of power and influence in that moment and her unprofessional frenzied rant.
Well, she's friends with Eli Rabashkin, with Chanel Lal, Young New Zealander of the Year. It all kind of comes together. It's not a conspiracy. It's just stuffed. Really.
It's just happened, mate. One CIS male down, Marama, the green-brown sort of creature from Tāne Mahuta, ploughs on.
Yeah. Hey, guys, that was a good... How did we feel about that? Did I threaten any of you? Did you feel unsafe at any time, or would you be happy to come back and do it again?
I'm ready for another half an hour right now. Can we go again? Probably not.
I got to take calls. I got texts just pouring in.
No problem.
Thank you very much, Helen Houghton, leader of the New Conservative Party. And Shane Jones, we're going to have an idea about exactly who you are in a couple of weeks, aren't we?
Indeed. April the 14th, come to the pub at Kitty Kitty. All will be revealed.